In this video, we're going to talk about how you can change the structure of your site by changing the PHP templates that make up the pages. And it's because sometimes the CSS isn't enough. So it's very difficult, for example, to do things in the CSS like remove the title from the home page. If we have a look at our website, typically, on the home page of a website, you wouldn't necessarily want to see the word home. Also, typically on a website, you wouldn't necessarily want to have this sidebar on the home page. In fact, you probably wouldn't want the sidebar on your About page, your Contact page, but you would want to retain it on your blog page. So those kinds of changes are not really possible just using CSS. Once we need to change things that are structural, we need to impact on the PHP templates. In order to do that, we're going to be using the WordPress template hierarchy. So I'm going to suggest that you open up this URL in your browser and just have it ready to go in a tab while we work through the rest of this video working up to learning how to use the WordPress template hierarchy. What we're going to do first of all is install a plugin. Now, WordPress is very highly customizable with plugins. So if you were doing an e-commerce site, there's a number of shopping cart plugins and various e-commerce plugins that you can use. If you were doing something like a learning management system, there's plugins and entire themes that are built for learning management systems. So plugins are a very powerful way to customize your site. They also can be very tricky. I'm just going into our dashboard and I'm going to go to the plugins menu. Now, WordPress comes with a couple of plugins already installed. These plugins are not going to be necessary for us. Akismet is a good plugin. It is used to eliminate spam on your website, but we are not allowing any commenting on this site, so we don't need Akismet, so I'm actually going to delete it. Generally with plugins, if you're not going to be using them, it is better to delete them or minimally deactivate them, simply because they're mostly built using PHP and JavaScript, and they can conflict with one another and they can slow your site down. I'm going to delete Hello Dolly as well. So you want to be very careful when you're choosing plugins for your WordPress site. You want to make sure that they are from reputable developers. You want to make sure that they have a lot of active installations. You want to make sure that they were last updated very recently. You want to go to the developer website, make sure it looks legitimate. You want to make sure that they have a large proportion of 5-star reviews. So the plugin that we're going to be using is called Show Current Template. So I'm just searching template here. And this is the Show Current Template plugin that we're going to be installing. Now, this has some good reviews. It has a good number of active installations. It's compatible with our version of WordPress, and it could have been updated a little bit more recently, but 6 months is not bad. I'm not going to worry about it too much, however, because this plugin is only going to be for us to use in our dashboard. It's not something that will affect the user experience of our website in any way. So we don't need to worry too much about it. If it ended up being a problem or if it led to a conflict or a security hole, we could easily delete it and it would inconvenience us, but it wouldn't impact on the user experience. So I'm going to install it and I'm going to activate it. To see what this plugin does, we're going to have to go back to the front end of our site, refresh, and you'll notice we now have a new item in the top black bar of our website. And of course, we're seeing this black bar because we're logged in. And what this is showing us is which template the page is using. Now, what does this mean? A WordPress page is actually made up of a whole number of PHP files. And the most important PHP file is whatever one is being used as the template for that page, and it is one of these files in the middle here. This file is the primary template that is used for any given page. Every type of page is going to use one of these basic template files, and it calls in the other PHP files. So for example, on our home page, we can see that the primary template being used is the file called page.php. And if we mouse over this menu item, we can see all the other files that are being called in. It's also using our functions PHP file. It's calling in a footer file. It's calling in the parent theme functions PHP file, calling in a header, and it's calling in a lot of other files here. So this plugin is going to be invaluable for us as we try to determine which template, which PHP file we need to change if we want to do something to this page. For example, if we want to remove the sidebar or the title from the home page, we know that the file we need to change is page.php. If we go to our About page, it is also using page.php. So that is something we need to be aware of. If we change something in the page.php template, it's not only going to affect our home page, it's also going to affect our About page. Just going to skip over blog for 1 second and look at contact. It is also using page.php. So it looks like that is a very standard template that many of our pages are using. Now if I click on blog, blog is actually using a different template. It is using the template called index.php. The reason for that is because we told our website that we wanted our blog page to in fact be the index of all of our blog posts for this website instead of our home page. If you recall, we went into our settings and we said make the home page a static page using the page called home, and make the blog page the posts page, which is essentially telling it use index.php for the blog page. Now we can click into one of our blog posts and see that our posts are using a different template. They're using single.php. And just scrolling down here, I can see that even though I have checked off that I don't want to allow commenting, I still have the post comment button and the comment box in this template. So I would want to remove that. So I know that if I want to make a change to my posts, I need to make changes in the file single.php. Now going back to our diagram, we saw index being used, we saw single being used, and we saw page being used, but we didn't see any pages that were using category or archive. And these are a special kind of index page that we use very, very commonly in WordPress to generate sections in a way that means we will be creating the page, but it will not be visible in our dashboard. So we're going to go through the exercise of creating now our portfolio section. Now what we said was that we were going to want, in addition to a home page, an about page, a contact page, and a blog area where we're going to write articles that will allow us to develop some search traffic, that we were also going to want a portfolio section. Now, the way to accomplish that is we actually need to generate an archive or a category page that is going to dynamically serve only the stream of posts that are categorized as portfolio. So I'm going to go and just make sure that I have that category. I do have that category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a post and give it that category. This is a portfolio piece. Now before I save, I'm just going to scroll down and ensure that I give it the portfolio category. I can give it other categories as well, but minimally it needs to have the portfolio category so that when I create the portfolio section, it will automatically go into that section. I'm going to publish my page. Now if I go back to the front end of my site, if I just scroll down to my categories, I now see that I have portfolio in the list. I'm going to click on that category. And what WordPress has done is it has dynamically generated a page with my portfolio piece on it. And as I create new portfolio pieces, they will go into this page. Now, this page only exists right in this moment because I clicked on the category of portfolio. But I can use the URL to make sure that I have that page and have it available in my menu. So I'm going to copy this URL. I'm going to go into my dashboard. I'm going to go to Appearance, Menus. I'm just going to scroll down to this Custom Links area. And I'm going to paste in that URL. You want to make sure that you don't double paste HTTP. That's a little bit annoying that when you go into this box, there's already an HTTP in there. So we don't need it twice. Make sure that isn't the case. And our link text is going to be, let's call it My Portfolio. And I can add that to my menu, drag it into, I think I want it right after the home page. And you'll see over on the right that it is a different kind of a page. When it's a page that we've created in the dashboard and we can find it and change it in our dashboard, it's pictured here as a page. However, my portfolio is just a custom link. Now let's go back on the front page. We're going to refresh. It's now a link in our menu, and it will use the link that was generated when we clicked on the category portfolio to dynamically generate this page every time the user clicks on this menu item. But it is not a page that is available to us in the dashboard. We didn't create it in the Pages area of our dashboard. We created it only as a custom link. Just to reiterate, our category portfolio page is a dynamic page, and that is one of the most powerful features of WordPress. You could create an entire site by making sure that there was a separate section for specific categories, for subcategories, which could be subsections, and those pages, those sections, would dynamically fill with the content that is categorized. Using those categories, those posts would go to those sections simply by being categorized in that way. And those dynamic pages don't exist in the dashboard. They only exist when the user requests that URL. But what is interesting and important is that we now can see, if we look up here in the top bar, that this page is using the archive.php as its template. So we're going to learn all about how we change all of these different templates, page.php, index.php, and archive.php, in order to make changes to the structure of our site. For example, if we wanted to remove the title from the home page, or if we wanted to remove the sidebar from home and contact and about. And we're going to be using our plugin to know which template the page that we want to modify is currently using. And then we're going to use the WordPress template hierarchy to understand how to modify the template to make those changes visible. So let's have a look at the WordPress template hierarchy. Generally speaking, you're going to want to sort of read this template hierarchy from right to left and from left to right. So Because we have our plugin installed, we're going to be starting on the right side of the page. So if, for example, we wanted to remove the title from the home page, we would start on the right and we would say, which template is it using? Is it index.php? No, it isn't. We're going to kind of move backwards. It's not archive.php. It's not single.php. Well, there it is. It's page.php. So what do we need to do to interrupt this template hierarchy to say, okay, WordPress, for our home page, we don't want you to load up page.php. We want you to load up a customized PHP file that is somewhere prior to page.php in this flow. So that can mean that we're going to force it to load a default template or a custom template. If it is a custom template, that means we're going to create a template that will be accessible in our dashboard and that we can apply to any of the pages on our site. If it is a default template, it's only going to apply to that page. If, for example, we wanted to remove the title from the home page, but none of our other pages, then the logical choice would be that we would want to create a new default template for the home page only. That would remove the title. So what would that look like? Well, looking at our template hierarchy, we would need to create a page that is called page-slug.php or page-id.php. What do we mean by slug? Let's have a look in our website. It's our home page that we want to change. We know that it's the page.php template. We've already had a look in our template hierarchy, and we've saw that if we want to make changes to the home page and the home page only, we want to create a new default for the home page. And that file is going to be called page-$slug.php. Well, what does $slug.php mean? Let's go in our dashboard and go to our home page. If you go on the dashboard, you might be looking around saying, I don't see anything called slug. Well, this is where our screen options menu comes in. You probably need to go under your screen options menu and check off slug. And basically, that will mean that now we can see the slug. This doesn't really do anything to the page. It's just in our dashboard. Now we can see the slug for that page. Now you'll notice the slug is pretty much just a lowercase version of the page title. And in 99% of the cases, that's exactly what it is. If this page title was 2 words, then the slug would be lowercase with a dash in between each word. But generally speaking, it's not a bad idea just to double check that you have the slug right before you start modifying your PHP templates. We know now that it's page.php that we're going to want to modify. We know that we want our modifications to only apply to the home page. So we're going to make a new default template for the home page, and it's going to need to be called page-home.php. But how do we make that new file? Well, you always make it by making a copy of the template from the parent theme. Now, this can be a little bit confusing because we've already talked about how we're only overriding in our style sheet. We're not making a copy of the functions PHP from the parent theme. We're only adding changes to our functions file. It's slightly different when it comes to changing page templates. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into 2016. We're going to find page.php. We're going to copy the file, the whole file. We're going to copy it. Don't move it out of there. We're going to paste it into our child theme, and we know right away that we want it to be called page-slug.php, and in this case it's going to be a new template for the home page, so we want to call it page-home.php. home.php. And what do we want to do to our home page? Well, now we can open this file and make our code changes. This is saying in our comment, the template for displaying pages. Let's just change that comment, the template for displaying the home page, and then we can remove that part of the comment. Now, we said that we want to remove the title. We also said that we want to remove the sidebar. So that's actually the easier thing to do. So let's start with that. Let's remove the sidebar simply by commenting it out. Generally, what you want to do when you're changing your PHP templates in WordPress is you want to do as little damage as possible. So you never want to delete code. You just want to comment it out wherever you can, and then comment your own code so that you remember that you did that. Now, removing the title from this page is going to be slightly more tricky because I just don't see anything that looks like a title here. Let's go back to our site. Just going to refresh. I can see right away that I am using my new template. I have now created a default template for the home page, and in fact, the sidebar is gone. The other sort of change that we might want to make is we might want to remove the sidebar from our About page, our Contact page, and it could be that there's going to be other pages in the future, once we've handed off our site to our client, where they might want to make pages such as sales pages or opt-in pages that don't have the sidebar. So that sounds like a good candidate for making a custom page type that would be available in the dashboard in the drop-down menu and therefore could be used for any page. So we're going to modify the page.php template to be a new kind of custom page that could be used for any page on the site to generate a page with no sidebar. So in order to do that, we go through a very similar but not identical process. If we look at our template hierarchy, what we're doing now is we're creating a custom template. And we can see that the naming convention is $custom.php, meaning we can pretty much name it whatever we want. And the way we're going to turn it into a template that appears in our drop-down in our dashboard is by putting a little bit of information in the comment. So the process is very similar. We're going to go into our parent theme. We're going to copy the page.php file. I'm going to go back into our child theme and paste it. And let's rename it right away to no sidebar.php. Now we're going to need to go in and modify the code. So we've done two things in our comment to modify this code. One is we've changed it to say that this is now going to be the template for displaying pages with no sidebar. But this is the really important part of the comment that has to be changed so that this page will now show up in our dashboard as an option that could be used on any page. And that is, we need to say template name, :space, and then the exact name of our file, which in this case is no-sidebar.php. Of course, we need to change the code to remove the sidebar. And in fact, this isn't commenting out the sidebar on the home page. This is just commenting out the sidebar. Let's go back and look on our site. And if I click around, I'm not seeing it. And the reason for that is because we haven't applied it anywhere yet. It is now available to us in our drop-down menu. So I'm just going back to see all of my pages. If we wanted to apply it to our About page, for example, We now have a new menu in our dashboard. And if I go in the drop down, I can see my no sidebar page. And sure enough, now we have applied this custom template to our About page, and we have removed the sidebar. The caveat that you need to understand is that this template is only applicable to pages that have page.php as their template. So in other words, we would not want to go into, for example, our blog page and change it to have no sidebar. And as a matter of fact, that is not even available to us in our dashboard for blog because it does not use the template that no sidebar was built on. If, however, we go in and have a look at our contact page, we will see that that template is available to us because it is built on the template that this page is using. So we can apply no sidebar to our contact page and remove it from that page as well. So we've seen how we can generate a page that is built using a custom URL. And by copy pasting the URL, we can get it into our menu. We've seen how we can generate a page that is very specific to only that page by calling it page-slug.php, in this case page-home, and make changes that will only ever appear on that page. And we've seen how we can make a custom template that can be applied to any page that uses the basic template that the customization was made on. But how might we remove the title from this page? Typically, when you make category pages, this is the thing that you really do want to remove, this title, because it's not in the same font as the other titles on our site, and it really doesn't look very professional. So we know that it's going to be the archive page that we want to impact. Let's go back to our template hierarchy and see what we need to do. So again, we're going to start from right to left, and we can see that here is the flow that ends up going to archive.php. And ours is a category archive. So if we just work backwards, we can see that we're going to need to rename our category portfolio page either as category-slug.php or category-id.php to interrupt this flow and not allow WordPress to load this archive page with its ugly, unprofessional title. We want it to load our file where we're going to remove the title. So the process is very similar. We're going to go into our parent theme. We're going to find the template that we want to modify. It's archive.php. We're going to copy it. And we're going to paste it into our child theme. Now, the slug is, in this case, the category slug. So before we modify this page title to be category-slug, we're just going to go into our site and ensure that we know what the slug is. Now you can probably guess that the slug is going to be this category, probably in lowercase letters, but let's just make sure. So I'm going into my posts menu down to categories, and I'm just going to look for, and there it is. There's my category that is building the page, and the slug is in fact the word portfolio in lowercase letters. So we know that we need to rename our archive page to be category-slug or -portfolio. Now, if you used a different word or it was a different category, you would need to replace the word portfolio with whatever is the slug that you're using, that you're trying to modify. So now we can open up this file and we're going to remove the title. Now, I'd always like to make sure that I change this comment. So this is the template for displaying our portfolio section. Now, it's a little bit easier to see what we need to modify here because this type of page template is clearly loading the H1 right here. So I just want to comment it out. And I'm going to add my own comment here, and I'm inside the PHP now. So I'm using PHP commenting, and I'm actually going to put in my own title because I do want the page to have a title, but I actually want it to look like the rest of the pages. So let's save this. Now I can see that I'm using my new page. Instead of archive, we've interrupted the template hierarchy and we're loading our page, category-portfolio, where we have removed the title. But what I want to just double check is I want to see what class is being applied to the H1s on my other pages, and it is this class of entry title. Right above the PHP, I'm just going to paste in the H1 with the class of entry title, and I'm just going to change it to say my portfolio. Now, I still have some issues with this page. I really don't want this line here. It still doesn't look like the other pages. So I'm going to inspect it. Looks like this class of page header has this border at the top. I can go in and just double check how these pages, so these have this header class entry header. I'm actually going to just change, I'm in my portfolio code, I'm going to change it to the header class of entry header rather than page header so that it will better match my other pages. So rather than try to remove the border in the CSS, I actually changed the class in the PHP template. And now my portfolio page is rendering more like my other pages. Now the final thing that we haven't done that we might want to do is we might want to remove the title on the home page. So we left that for last because it's going to be a slightly more complicated process, and it's a good thing to do it once you've had a little bit more familiarity with working in templates. So I'm going to close my category portfolio, close my no sidebar. I'm back in my page-home.php file. And the problem we were having was that it's not obvious how or where that H1 is being loaded in this template. And the fact is that it is not being loaded in this template. It is being loaded in a subtemplate. And we can see here that there's a comment that says include the page content template. So what that means is that the header and the rest of the content on our home page is being loaded from another file. It looks like it's being loaded from a folder called template parts, and the file is called content-page. So that's just something that is specific and somewhat peculiar to WordPress, is that if we want WordPress to go to a specific place, we can put the directory structure into the function in this way. So that's how I know that I'm looking for a folder called template parts and a file called content-page. So let's just do a couple of things to verify this investigation. I'm on my home page in the front end. I'm just going to go under template and I'm going to see if there is anything that looks like that. And as a matter of fact, right here at the bottom, I can see that in my parent theme, there is a folder called template parts and that this page is loading something called content-page. And in fact, so is my about page and so is my contact page. And that's because they were all based on the same page template. So that's where the title is being generated. And in fact, all the content is being generated for all of them. So we're going to need to be a little bit careful when we make changes to that file that we don't end up removing the title from about and contact. So let's have a look in 2016. There is in fact a folder called template parts, and there is content-page. There's the file. So that's the file we're going to want to copy and modify. Before we do that though, we want to replicate this directory structure in our child theme. That means we need to make a folder called template-parts. Now it's just a folder, so you don't need to copy that from 2016. You can just make one. Now we're going to go into the template parts folder in our parent theme. We're going to copy content-page. We're going to paste it into our template parts folder in our child theme, and I'm going to immediately change this file name because again, I don't want what I do to impact on my other pages. I only want it to impact on the home page. I've changed the file name. Now I'm going to make my changes in the file to remove the title. And let's see if we can find it. Well, it's right there. It was pretty easy. So I'm just going to comment it out. I'm going to write myself a comment. I'm going to save it. Now we still have another change that we need to make. And it is in the page-home file. And the reason is because our page-home file, it's still going to look in this template parts folder, and that's great. We have one in our child theme, so it's going to look in there. But it's going to be looking for a file called content-page. We renamed the file to be content-homepage. So I'm just modifying this path so that this default template for our homepage is going to look in the template parts folder for our file called content-homepage. I'm going to save that. Now if we refresh, go back to our home page, we have effectively removed the title, but we still have a title on our about page, we still have a title on our contact page, and if we go back to the home page and have a look, now we can see that it's going into our child theme, into the template parts folder that we made, and it's loading the content-homepage where we removed the title. So that is how we can modify our PHP templates in order to change the structure of our theme. We looked at how we can make a default template that will only work on specific pages that have their slug in the title. We looked at how we can make a custom template that will appear in the drop-down menu in our dashboard and can be applied to any pages. And we looked at how we can create a template based on the archive.php template to make our archive pages look more like the other pages on our site. So our final step is, of course, to commit our changes to Git. Let's just do a Git status. I'm actually going to add all of this. Strictly speaking, this probably would have been better to make a commit after we had installed that plugin and then commit our template changes, but it's all related to template changes. So I will reflect that in my commit message. Generally speaking, it's probably a good idea to do Git commits a little bit more frequently than we have been doing them. But worst case scenario, you do want to make sure that you make a commit at the end of every working session.